Step into the Trademark, your go-to podcast for everything marketing in the trades. Hosted by award-winning industry marketing experts Sarah Ghirardo from Remarketable and Eric Thomas from Rival Digital. Together, we're here to unite the worlds of trades and marketing, bringing you insights, stories, and strategies from the heart of the industry. Whether you're a trade professional, a marketing expert, or somewhere in between, this is the place for you. Listen in as we're here for the big ideas, the game changers, and the everyday successes. Because at the Trademark, we're with the trades and for the trades.
All right. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the TradeMarke Podcast. We have got Adam Goldman with us today, and I'm really excited. We're going to chat a little bit about the franchising world, which is something that I love to chat about because it's the world that I kind of got my start in when it comes to home services. So really excited to dig in here. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great today. Thank you so much, Eric. So nice to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, I guess just to kick things off, Adam, tell us a little bit more about you, what you do and kind of how you help business owners and franchises and all that good stuff.
So my role is my company, we're matchmakers, or we're like the eHarmony or Match.com of the franchising world. And what happens with us is we are looking for people that want to become entrepreneurs with training wheels, because that's what franchising is. Meaning you have all the benefits of being an entrepreneur, but you're not really on your own. And we're connecting with great brands in 75 industries. It's a free service, meaning if we make a successful match, it's the franchise brand that pays us, not the candidate. Yeah. And home services is definitely a big part of our practice, right? I'd say home services maybe 60 to 70% of what we do.
Nice. So how long have you been in the franchising world for?
I have been in the franchising world now for over 15 years. I owned a successful office cleaning master franchise for 8 years and transitioned into this role. And I've been doing this now 8 years plus. So it's been quite a journey, and I've seen a lot of changes in the franchising world. One of the biggest changes I've seen is post-pandemic. I've seen a kind of a flight towards home service and essential businesses and non-brick-and-mortar businesses.
Yeah. What was some of the, I guess, when you made that transition from, franchise business ownership to the consulting, coaching, matchmaking type role? What were some of the differences that you just saw from a day-to-day standpoint?
So, great question. In fact, I just visited with one of my colleagues today. I hadn't seen her in a very long time, and it was great to reconnect with her. So, look, what I would say is this, that the difference on a day-to-day basis is that my role is more matchmaking, right? It's a different day-to-day if your role is to kind of be an owner, an operator of a business. And I was the owner and the operator. And this is different in that I am the owner and the operator, but it's one thing to kind of manage it. I almost liken it, Eric, to kind of running an aircraft carrier, right? Where there are different maneuvers that you make. And I still have that element with my current business, but this is a little bit different in that on a day-to-day basis, it's kind of really getting to know people really well and kind of very intellectually stimulating, as opposed to, frankly, running a business, which could be complicated if it was office cleaning master franchise.
Yeah. In your opinion, when you're matchmaking for franchises, who's kind of the ideal candidate for owning a franchise?
One of the great things about my business is that someone says, "Hey, who's a perfect franchisee for you?" I'm able to cast a wide net. I typically do placements in the United States and Canada. And frankly, anyone that has any sort of business savvy can be a fit for franchises. So I have some brands that are more sales heavy than others, but even someone that doesn't have any sales skills, I have other brands that are just really good at marketing, right? Where the leads are coming in nonstop and you don't know what to do, and it's more operational heavy. Now, if you don't have any business skills at all, then that's a challenge for you.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that post-pandemic, there's been a little bit more of a rush towards like the essential service, home service companies. Any particular trades, that you've noticed more so than others that are doing really well right now?
So, I mean, if we're talking about home services, what I would say is that The ones that I like the most are things that are need to have as opposed to nice to have, or things that have a unique selling point. In the franchising world, one of the most popular segments, for good reason, is anything related to restoration, right? That's more insurance driven. If we're looking at the home trade. In fact, I would argue that might not necessarily even be a home service because your client is an insurance company, right? But I just love that business in general. The things that aren't as exciting are things that are just kind of, especially with talking about economic recession and things, that's where things that are more nice to have.
Yeah. Yeah. So who are some of the franchises that you've worked with in the
So I
past? Are
can't
you
really
able to?
talk about specific
Yeah.
brands, right? But I have brands in 75 industries. In an average year, my candidates decide to, in buying groups, buy about 75 to 100 territories. And it's about 20 to 25 placements per year. So I'm really exposed to many different industries out of those 75.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I love talking about franchising. I think it is a unique opportunity for anyone really. I mean, I think like you mentioned, as long as you have some business acumen, you can start with an HVAC franchise or a pest control franchise or a home cleaning franchise. You don't necessarily have to be, a master mechanic or a master plumber. So I think it is really unique. And I also think so I think there's unique advantages to both sides, like for franchise business owners and then like non-franchise business owners. You typically see them be more skilled within the trade to start because they're a technician turned business owner. And so they tend to struggle on the business side, not so much the trade side. Whereas the franchise model, we see a lot of times it's like they're really good on the business side, sales, marketing, operations, all that good stuff. So I think that's really unique.
And let me just kind of piggyback on this, Eric. Franchising is one of the only places where it's a positive thing to have no experience ahead of time, because many of my franchise brands, they actually think of it. They want to teach these franchisees to do it their way. So if it's a situation where you've learned already to do something, let's say you invested in a mosquito spraying business, but you already had your own mosquito spraying company, you're probably not a fit for this brand.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not, I totally can relate to that. We're at my first, I guess my first corporate marketing job really was at Mosquito Joe. They did the mosquito outdoor pest control service. And I remember, like you were saying, it was always more ideal when we would have, folks that were coming in interested in purchasing a franchise. It was always more ideal that they didn't have an existing business or like experience, because we wanted them to follow the business model that was already, set up and that they were buying into. Whereas there's a few ones that we worked with that they had, an existing landscaping or pest control company. And it was always kind of tough because it was like they wanted to do it the way that they had been doing it and kind of butt heads with it a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to just chat a little bit about, on the business side, because it's not often we get to chat with, with folks on the kind of the business side of things. And I know you were mentioning that it's really good to have some business, savviness or business acumen for, franchise business ownership. What do you feel are kind of like the top? I know we kind of chatted about like kind of like the ideal candidate for those, but like what are some of the traits that individuals that do really well in franchise business ownership kind of possess?
I really think that franchising, to me, the top skill, if I could choose one skill, I would choose it to business development, right? I just think that you're already getting the operation, right? I don't care what business it is, you need to somehow make it happen, right? And look, I have some businesses, they just have this built-in demand. You have a pool service company or a maid service, you still have you have this demand, right? But most businesses, you kind of need to go out and make it happen, whether or not it's a trade show for a shelving company.
Mm-hmm. What are some opportunities, like when it comes to business development, what are some things that you generally recommend for folks to do to work on that, within their business?
So I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question about how you do business development.
Yeah, like what are some things that you generally recommend? Are you big towards recommending like BNI groups or, networking groups, anything in particular that you recommend when it comes to business development for folks?
So every franchise is different, right? So, I would listen to the franchisor. I think home services and BNI are like a match made in heaven. In fact, I was in a BNI group, and you have one person that does the mortgage, the other person does roofing, right? It's just like this symbiosis, right? It's almost like a team or a guild. But that's one thing to do. I really think that digital marketing, like things like Nextdoor or Thumbtack, although Thumbtack isn't necessarily the right thing for a lot of people. Some people could argue that the costs are too high, or there are all these different tools that you can use, or even referrals. That's a great one, or canvassing. There are so many different levers to pull.
Yeah. Yeah. I think canvassing is a great way. What are some different canvassing techniques that you have seen work successfully, I guess, either with your prior business or with any of the businesses you work with?
So my own experience in office cleaning was that, especially with new companies moving in to different offices, that when we actually were on the ground and kind of had reconnaissance and figured out who was where, and we actually had a great ground game. Let's say we had a client in one office park and we're able to get ones close to that. That was powerful, right? And that worked out really, really well, as opposed to being just another team. It's funny, I'm actually not a candidate for office cleaning, but I got bombarded with calls, even the past couple of days, from office cleaning companies, or even emails, and I'm not a prospect.
Yeah.
So to kind of to kind of go there and see them in person, that's awesome. That's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I would, like if I had an office cleaning business, I would somehow monitor or scrape like online listings for office businesses for lease, or office spaces for lease. So that when they're like no longer for lease, I would hit them with some door hangers or
absolutely
popping.
And it's interesting story, Eric. My first job in high school, I owned a driveway sealing company, and our sole method of going ahead and marketing was to have door hangers and to give a quote on that.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what are some things that you're seeing in the franchising world now that might be different or unique than they were, say 5 to 10 years ago?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that many brands have kind of wisened up, and what they found is that there's a candidate. If you look at what's going on in the economy right now, we still have really low unemployment historically. I think during the pandemic, it was as high as 8 or 9%, or whatever that was. We're still at maybe 3 or 4%. And what that means is that the candidate really wants to run a business semi-absentee, meaning they can keep their day job, and maybe the spouse will help with the business or something like that. So what that means is franchisors are adjusting. Ones that otherwise would only accept owner-operator candidates are now accepting semi-absentee candidates. And they're really creating this whole ecosystem where literally back at the head office, they're having like call centers and all these great ways to, or even booking, to kind of streamline processes and allow franchisees to get a good value for their investment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I've also seen, so my cousin owns a Mosquito Joe.
Okay.
And he also owns a holiday light company. This is something I've seen a lot with the franchising world lately. I'm not sure if you're seeing it too. I've seen a lot of franchisees that own like those seasonal type businesses, like outdoor pest control.
Yeah.
Also, they're like stacking up franchises. So like they'll own a pest control, but they'll also own like Christmas lights. And so, or they'll also own like a pool service company. That way they can keep their staff from each of the companies kind of like employed throughout the seasons. Have you seen something similar to that at all?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's a trend inside of franchising, right? Where businesses that are seasonal, like mosquito spraying, they go into other seasonal businesses like holiday lighting. I've definitely seen that. And holiday lighting is just a profit machine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like those kind of just popped up out of nowhere over the past couple of years.
Absolutely.
Like I had never heard of such a thing. And then I heard of Wonderly Lights, which is there's in Virginia Beach, like their offices there. And then this past holiday season, I swear I saw like every single house down the road had a yard sign up for some type of holiday lighting company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. So you are seeing like, I guess are there any like unique stories or instances you've seen where folks are stacking up those seasonal businesses? Like, are they just sticking to like one or two, or have you seen some doing more than that, like three or four?
So one of the interesting things I've seen is it's not necessarily stacking up businesses that are seasonal or not. I've seen people, you can always expand horizontally,
Yeah.
meaning you can go ahead and buy businesses to have different regions. You can own North Houston and South Houston, but like you say, you could also expand vertically, right? Meaning,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to have something else going on. Some of my placements, I've noticed that they've actually had two businesses that aren't necessarily related to one another, but it's just kind of interesting, right? Like one person might have driveway sealing along with mosquito spraying just to kind of spread their risk around.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really smart. We have a client that does heating and air conditioning. They're not a franchise, but they do heating and air
Okay.
conditioning. And they reached out and they were like, we're thinking about starting garage doors as a separate business, but like, we're not sure if it's a good idea. And I was like, how many customers do you have in your database for heating and air conditioning?
Yep.
Oh, like 9,500. And I was like, you have nothing to lose by setting
Yep.
up a garage door company. Like
Absolutely.
you have the contacts. You've already earned their business once.
Look, I mean, a lot of franchisors are looking to own the home, right? So
Yeah.
that's they don't only offer one thing; they offer many different things. And cross pollination, someone that is doing something related and is in your market that you trust, that does something that's not competing against you. That's a positive value proposition for a franchisor.
Yeah. Have you seen, I guess we don't have to get into specifics, but have you seen any instances where it's been like a conflict, say, like if they own a franchise that's a part of one franchisor and then they expand to another or expand to another franchise that's kind of another franchisor, is that like a conflict at all or no?
Meaning, so someone owns, for example, a spraying business, and then they go into pool, like a pool cleaning business afterwards.
Yeah, but the pool cleaning business is owned by a different franchisor than
You know
the
what?
spraying business.
Inside of disclosure documents, I'm really glad you brought that up. They're really written when it comes to what are considered competing businesses or not. It's pretty
Yeah.
clear cut, right? And frankly, if it's not related to that business, then it should not be something that you can't do, meaning you should be able to do something that's not related.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I've noticed this trend with the franchisors wanting to own the home because I worked at one of them and I saw their push to do this. And I felt like if I was a franchisee with that type of opportunity, I would own a single territory and just be like, I got pest control, lawn care, holiday lighting, whatever, dryer vent cleaning. And I would just have one call center that books
Yep.
all the calls for all the different
Okay.
services. Have one sales team that's capable of selling landscaping jobs, hardscaping jobs, dryer vent cleaning jobs, heating and air conditioning systems, and then just hire technicians for the trades. I'm sure there's folks that are doing that. I'm sure I'm not, a wise and unique individual that's thought of this idea, but that's what I would do personally.
I think that's smart.
Yeah. Have you seen folks doing stuff like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, I talked about how sales skills are a great skill. If I had a second choice, it would be someone that has operational excellence, right? Because that's something I don't have myself. Frankly, it's not my skill set. I'm not an engineer. And
Yeah.
if someone's a great, like just an amazing operator, then they have the ability to do these things. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything I haven't asked yet that, that you were hoping to dig into and chat about?
So look, I would say that what's interesting is that about my industry is that people have a misconception about how expensive franchises are, right? So people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be buying a business. It's a McDonald's. It's going to be over $1 million. No, I mean, one of the great things about non brick and mortar businesses, service businesses, is that just because it's on the lower end, that doesn't mean it's not a bad thing. It means that you could potentially scale it. I know someone in Houston that started his service business with one truck and he built it into an 8-figure business, right? Meaning over $10 million a year in revenue from that one
Yeah.
truck. And I think that's one of the great things about service companies is just because you start small doesn't mean you're stuck small.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that I've spent a lot of time looking and researching different franchises over the years. And I think the ones like personally, I think the ones within the home services industry are a slam dunk because
Yep.
the cost to get started with those is really not that unreasonable. Like I think even for some of the pest control ones, I mean, it's, $40 or $50,000 investment and then another probably $120,000. Whereas I think when people think of franchising, they're like, I'm going to open up an Applebee's and it's going to cost $350,000. And they get scared of it. But like, there's franchises out there where it's like, no, you just need a couple Sprinter vans, the equipment, some van wraps, all the, of course, pay for the franchise, but it's not as scary or as intimidating as it seems, I think. And I think there's much more security around it too, because it's a proven business model.
I agree. What I would say is that, the slam dunk is something that's an inexpensive investment that people need, right? And I look, if we talk about home services, I like blinds. I know blinds isn't very glamorous. This whole angle of people working from home, something that they weren't doing before. And I just think that something that Amazon can't do, it's customizable. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. I've never thought of that before, but that's totally true. My wife just went and bought blinds today, and
Lucky you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like I'm excited. I get to go hang those up after work. But that is a good point because it's like you can't really customize them off of Amazon, and they're definitely needed. They definitely make a big difference in the house for sure.
Yep.
Cool. What's kind of like an unpopular opinion that you might have about franchising that others might, think like, oh, that's ridiculous, but it's you firmly believe in and would argue against.
So look, what I would say is this. My unpopular opinion is that I actually really believe. You got me here. I've never been asked this question before. You kind of stumbled me on this. I've never heard this question before. Let me think. Give me a second to think about this. Unpopular. So my unpopular opinion is this, that people tend to underestimate how important a system or process is and how that's my unpopular opinion, because I would say that people are like, hey, I'm just going to start my own business. But when they kind of go into it and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to hire and I need a plan for this and I need to get the phones ringing and I need to have this standard operating procedure. For the right franchise brand, this really makes a lot of sense to invest in money where you're getting all that playbook. And that's my unpopular opinion, that for franchises, for the right ones, this whole idea of royalty fees and franchise fees is a worthwhile expense.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback on, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you talk to my happy franchisees, successful franchisees, what they say is that I am so happy that you connected me with this, because although it was expensive when it comes to the amount I'm paying per month for this royalty and franchise fee, I am getting so much value in the mistakes that I otherwise would have made if I'd started this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. So I guess in that regard, would you recommend that folks kind of reflect before they decide to start their own business to kind of see like if it, what's their best option? 'Cause I feel like a lot of folks, you're right. They're like, I don't want to pay 7% royalty. But instead they spend 3 years, their entire life savings and their mental sanity trying to start a business from the ground up.
So it's interesting you should mention this, because I think this is all about psychology. People talk about how humans have free will. I would argue in many ways we really don't. If we were able to control what we did, we wouldn't be spending our days in front of the TV eating potato chips, right? And people kind of sometimes they're not as open-minded as they might think. They're just so focused on starting on their own, even if it's more expensive, that they don't even think about the franchise brands.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So I guess any other pieces of insight or advice that we haven't hit on yet that you'd like to share before we start to wrap things up?
I can't think of anything else.
Awesome, cool. Well, this has been fun. I always enjoy talking about franchising. What are some ways that our listeners that might be interested in reaching out and learning more? How can they find you on the internet and learn more about you?
So best way to actually find out more is I offer free 15-minute consultations to see if I'm a fit for you for my free franchise matching service. The best way to get a hold of me is at franchiseadam.com to find my link to schedule something with me. Alternatively, you can go to franchisecoach.net that has more info on what we do and also find a calendar link there.
Awesome. Now, I think I saw that you have a book, right?
That's correct. Yes, it's called The Franchisee Lifestyle.
Nice. Where can folks find that on Amazon, all that good
They
stuff?
can find that on Amazon, absolutely. And look, the whole idea behind that is another misconception about the franchising world. People think that franchising means I'm going to be flipping burgers in the back. I believe of franchising. When I talk to my candidates, the number one challenge that they're looking to solve by investing in a franchise is lack of freedom. And my successful franchise placements are ones that are somehow able to have a great lifestyle and have a great income.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, we'll definitely link the book down as well as the website down in the show notes for anyone listening right now.
Here's the book.
Check it out. Yeah, The Franchisee Lifestyle. Definitely will check that out. I'd like to read that for myself. So I'll order a copy after this. Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you so much for hopping on and chatting with me for a little bit. This was just fun.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Thanks
Bye now.
everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.